Now I'd like to introduce Susie Fountain, who will be moderating the next portion of our webinar. Susie is the Director of Customer Success at Intelligence Bank and leads our team of customer success managers here in North America. So welcome, Susie. Can you introduce to us the folks that will be joining you today?
Absolutely. Thanks, Eric. So joining us today, we have Omar Salem. He is the Web Technology Specialist at the Wallace Foundation. He joined the foundation in 2008 and supports the development of the foundation's website and intranet and maintains their availability, reliability, and full functionality. He also prepares monthly web analytics reports, leads large-scale website projects, which we're going to talk about today, implements search engine marketing recommendations, and co-leads the foundation's web team. He's well-versed in website content management systems, has a master's degree in computer science, and a bachelor's degree in business administration. In his spare time, Omar can be found drawing comic book style scenes, several of which are on display in his office. So we also have Josh Koenig, who is co-founder and chief strategy officer of Pantheon. He is focused on making the open web a first-class platform for delivering results. He champions the value of the developer experience and the need to demonstrate impact with data. His work combines the visionary ideals of open source with the pragmatic utility of the agile approach. He was a very early Drupal adopter, user number 3,313 for those who want proof. And Josh was part of the team that drove the first high-profile public Drupal use case with the Howard Dean campaign in 2003. He then went on to found the Drupal Dojo, an online learning community for developers, and co-found the premier Drupal agency in San Francisco, Chapter 3. At Pantheon, Josh's mission is to liberate web teams from the confines of enterprise monoliths and the drudgery of infrastructure operations so they can focus on their real strategic goals using the highest quality tools of the trade. And finally, Beth Yezi, Vice President, Account Management at the agency Yes And. She guides clients to make the right strategic and tactical decisions to create digital experiences that help them connect better with their key audiences in support of their business goals. With over 20 years of experience, she has managed a wide variety of projects that have ranged from brand visual identity development to all types of digital initiatives, including website development, system implementations, e-commerce site development, online marketing campaigns, social community management, and search engine optimization. Beth specializes in large-scale WordPress and Drupal initiatives with a deep expertise in AMS, CMS, LMS integrations. She rounds out her skill set with the knowledge of inbound marketing and marketing automation platforms, things like Marketo, Pardot, and HubSpot. And Beth has managed some of Yes And's highest profile accounts, resulting in over a dozen national awards. So with that, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. All right, so Omar, we're going to start things off with you. Can you share with us a little bit about the Wallace Foundation and the role your website plays in what you do?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for that introduction. Yes, I can share a little bit about that with you guys. So Wallace is a national foundation that identifies knowledge gaps and tries to fill them in sectors in which we work, which are the arts, school leadership, and youth development. So we give out and fund multi-million-dollar grants to organizations for research. However, the amount of money we have is minuscule compared to the size of the sectors in which we work. So we stretch our philanthropic dollar by developing ideas to make progress in these fields. And our website is a catalyst to share broadly what has been learned from our grant recipients' efforts through downloadable PDF reports in which users can download free of charge on our website. So our website is a very big, important part of our organization.
Awesome. That sounds like a pretty big initiative. So can you tell us a little bit about the before state of the website, which is, before this project that we're going to start and kind of dig into?
Sure. So our website was on the SharePoint platform, which is a Microsoft product. We had originally went to SharePoint because the Microsoft CMS we were using had reached the end of life support and was decommissioned. So the developers we were working with at the time recommended SharePoint because at the time Microsoft was starting to push SharePoint as a front-facing website CMS, and also because since both products are Microsoft, they thought it would be easier for the migration. So everyone really knows SharePoint as an intranet, and for a while Microsoft was pushing it and adding new features for websites, but eventually they seem to have given up on that front, and the front-facing websites, and they redirected their focus to the intranets, and we had the birth of Office 365 and Microsoft 365 and such. So we started realizing that we were having challenges with the website and were limited to what we wanted to do without extensive developer work. So as our work evolved, I mean, the site as it was in the past was able to do its job back then, but then things have changed. So the backend was difficult to use for our content editors, and the on-page search was not great. We eventually had made a decision for the next website update and redesign that it would be on a platform other than SharePoint.
Awesome, thank you. And we're happy that you made that decision. And I believe that's where, Beth, you came into play. And from what I understand, you were pretty instrumental in helping Omar and his team select the tools for their new website in this project. Can you share with us what some of the key requirements or pain points you focused on solving kind of as you were kicking this off, and why were these the priority for you?
Sure. And, I think Omar spoke to a bit of them right then with their difficulty managing their site. But there were several challenges that Wallace had identified probably a couple years before we even came to the picture. Things that were included in that was their website didn't reflect their visual brand and they were having trouble updating it. They make all this great content in all these different formats like podcasts, video series, infographics, and the site they had was not able to display any of those types of content. So they couldn't really convey their insights and stories easily on their old website. As Omar mentioned, it was outdated, the platform it sat on. Search, as Omar mentioned, was really hard for users to use. They could not find what they were looking for. And oftentimes, even if they did, if they, say, stepped away halfway through a long report and came back, they had a very hard time finding it again. In summary, I mean, for most people, but for Wallace in particular, their website is all about their content, and simply put, the users just really couldn't find it easily, what they were looking for. And Wallace didn't have the freedom to publish all the types of content that they had. So we were addressing all of those in this new website.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. It sounds like the problem kind of was on both sides of, like the managing it and like on the back end and on the front end of using it. So it's a lot to juggle. And I think a lot of people listening can relate. So what was it about Pantheon, Drupal, and IntelligenceBank that sort of made you go with those platforms in particular?
Yeah, sure. So we love an open source platform. We are mostly a WordPress Drupal shop. The reason why we picked Drupal for these guys was it allows a lot of flexibility in terms of how pages can be structured to support their various content types. We also love Drupal because it's great at integrations. Pantheon is our #1 Drupal host for a variety of reasons, including the support, the price, and they also manage, whenever you have an account with Pantheon, you get 3 environments for your website. So you have a dev, a stage, and a prod. And what that allows us to do is, as we iterate on the site moving forward, our developers can work separate than our content editors. We're not on top of each other, canceling each other's work. So that's really key with Pantheon. IntelligenceBank, the reason why we went with a DAM in general is because Drupal falls very short in terms of storing and organizing assets. Their folder structure is a headache. It's just like, and once you put something in a Drupal, editor, it's really hard to find again. They don't let you tag. And we knew that Wallace had a ton of assets they were going to manage, and that Drupal, its one fall short was that component. So we wanted to go with the DAM.
Fantastic, and we're happy to hear that. So throwing it over to you, Josh, I think a lot of us are familiar with CMSs like Drupal, WordPress, and what have you. Of course, being IntelligenceBank, everyone here is very familiar with DAMs, but some of us may not know, A, who is Pantheon, and B, what is kind of a web ops software platform in general. So before we get too far along in this conversation, could you tell us a little bit more about what Pantheon does and the role you sort of play?
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure to be here with Rody and happy to contribute to the story. So Pantheon really enters the picture when you're thinking about an open source web platform and you want to really, 2 things. One, you need to make sure that it's robust and it's secure and it can handle a lot of traffic and other things like that, we're that enterprise grade platform. But that's not honestly unique. There's plenty of other enterprise grade platforms that are out there. I like to think we're the best, but if we are, it's by only a little bit. Where we really differentiate is, we help people get a lot more value out of those open source components in their web solution, because we help people keep them moving, like Beth just mentioned, right? By allowing developers and content editors to have a more modern workflow that keeps them out of each other's hair, and also having the guardrails in place so that you can be really confident that the changes you're going to push out aren't going to break anything. What that does is it gets you to a place where your website is always moving forward in terms of how it looks, what it integrates, what tools it gives your content team. And that's really key. People talk about composability as a big theme in industry right now, and it really is. It's complicated. You're weaving together multiple different technologies to ultimately deliver the right experience to your visitors and give the right tools to your team. And that's not something that in reality you're going to draw up on a whiteboard and implement over 6 months and get perfect. Or even if you do get it really good at that moment, within a month or 3 or 6, things are going to have changed. So the ability to continually move forward, to maintain velocity with the web project, to have agility, that's really what we do differently. And so, we're used actually by tens of thousands of professional web teams. They manage hundreds of thousands of websites. We serve billions of unique visitors monthly. But that the key thing that we do that's I think special and unique and valuable is we keep those websites alive as evolving projects and help people continue to drive innovation after launch.
I love that. We spend a lot of time telling our customers as well, like a dam is a living thing. So makes really resonates. So speaking from the dam side of things, we hear a lot of our customers say that like they first started looking for a dam when they hit a tipping point of, our assets are too cumbersome to manage out of a folder structure, or frankly, more bluntly, probably more commonly, our assets are a mess and we need help. At what point in a company or a website's evolution would you say it makes sense to incorporate a platform like Pantheon into the stack?
Yeah. So what is those tipping points? Like, I think that's a great way to think about it. One tipping point would be when you're thinking about having, dedicated professional web developers working on the website, and you want to have that be an ongoing thing. It's not for everyone. There are plenty of more modest use cases where you build the site and you're done. And you can run those sites on Pantheon, but the extra value that I'm talking about won't really kick in. So that's one. Another would be if you're feeling the pain of having those people be on top of each other, even if your web development work is, you're not ambitious, you don't have like a big team on it all the time, but if you are having that stepping on each other's toes kinds of pain, that's certainly a great one to think about. Even if you're not using Pantheon, like we've been pushing this concept of website operations or web ops, like you don't have to use our product to do this. It's really just industry standard best practices for how to do software development and keep it a little bit separate from content development so that you can have a nice smooth workflow. You can do it yourself, and there's other people in the market that can do it. I think we're the best, but like you don't need to use our product. It's more just consider adopting this practice if you're having those sorts of problems. The last one that I would mention is when you're thinking about not just a website, but a site portfolio. Particularly once you have the complexity of multiple properties, and particularly if you have more than one team, that's not in this case study the case, but in a lot of organizations where they're maybe thinking about expanding from a world where everyone had to share one website to actually giving different groups their own piece of the web or their own tools. That's a place where you want to figure out, you don't want to go from everybody uses the same thing to Wild West, everybody figures it out on their own, right? And a website operations approach can help you sort through the right things to keep in common versus the right things to let people run with on their own. So I'd say those are the three main tipping points.
Awesome. That's really helpful. And I can see Beth nodding. So Beth, I'm going to come back to you. Once Drupal, Pantheon, IntelligenceBank were selected, lined up, how did you go about leveraging their capabilities to help the Wallace Foundation rebuild their website? And can you give us an overview of how the systems work together? And Omar, I'm going to open it up to you as well to jump in with anything you want to add as Beth is going through.
Sure. Y'all get it started. So Drupal is their CMS, their content management system, which the site is built, right? And then Pantheon is where we host it. And we all know IntelligenceBank is the dam. And as I mentioned earlier, Drupal really allowed for greater flexibility in terms of structuring their various content types for Wallace. And due to Drupal's nature, it's very easy to integrate with IntelligenceBank. So as content is created on the Drupal site, the assets are served up from IntelligenceBank, and Wallace has a significant number of assets to support their rich content. As I mentioned earlier, Drupal's folder structure is abysmal, so loading those assets in Drupal and locating them in the future was going to cause some headaches due to the inability to tag and all the other problems I mentioned. So IntelligenceBank really came in to solve those problems for these guys moving forward.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Omar,
I
anything to
don't really
add?
I was about to say, I don't really have anything to add. I think, yeah, Beth said it, described it great. And I guess the only thing I would add is adding content to the website is very seamless with the Drupal connector. We can easily add content into there, and when there's an image that's really large, I have a preset set up so it can make the image size under 1 megabyte. So we don't have to worry about performance.
Awesome. Yeah, that ties into my question for you, which is, it sounds like there's been a lot of benefit out of like having these systems so well integrated. Kind of a triple-barreled question. How has the website made your life easier as the one who oversees it? How has it made things easier for your team as the ones who manage it? And then finally, what sort of feedback are you getting from your end users who are ultimately kind of consuming the website, if you will?
Yeah, no, the new website has definitely allowed our web team to be a lot more self-sufficient. Previously, they would need to come to me a lot more often for things as simple as a text edit. Because of the complexity of SharePoint, some content, such as on our toolkits, have lists feeding page content. So it wasn't always as simple as going onto a page, clicking edit, and making the change. You would have to first find out what the name of the list is, then go into the site contents, find that section, and make the edit from there. And that can get a little bit complicated for the end users. So we no longer have that issue. And in terms of feedback, yeah, we've been getting very good feedback from them. The team's very happy with it so far. It hasn't been a full year yet. We are still trilling it out and working with it. I don't really foresee anyone coming out and saying that they hate the new platform. It's been so far very positive.
Excellent. Hopefully it stays that way. So really what I'm hearing is the site's easier to manage, faster to load, download, maintain, easier to track things, systems play well with each other without compromising, oversight, compliance, all of that. So like, what's the catch? Anyone?
Yeah, get your ducks in a row, getting prepared beforehand, and doing your homework, doing your due diligence.
That part.
We did a lot of pre-work before we did this project. A lot of prep work way before we went to ESN.
That feeds really well.
They did a ton of prep work. They had to restructure, hundreds, maybe more reports to fit into the new content model on the website. I could safely say that they, as a team, did more work on content than I've ever seen in getting ready to make this website live.
That's
Yeah, and
awesome.
I would say the other thing, as you mentioned, you're sort of under a year into it, and being able to be responsive to feedback from stakeholders, because people will give you a lot of input beforehand, and you can but there are also, the reality is some stakeholders won't pay super close attention until it's actually live and in front of them, and then they'll have a lot more input. And there's a big difference in terms of the success of projects and their adoption if you can be responsive to that kind of day one feedback, and like think about those iterative improvements to fine tune something, like going from sort of a legacy SharePoint to a more modern Drupal. That's going to be a pretty big upgrade across the board, but then the details matter. So I think putting yourself in a position to really put the finishing touches on something, it really helps with internal adoption, and making sure that the last mile is sometimes the hardest, but it's also the most rewarding.
You are speaking my language. I preach this constantly with my customers and my team. We can have the most picture perfect theoretical implementation in the world, but once we actually put it into play, that's where the hard work is in, like, that's when people have feedback. That's when the actual usability comes into play, and that's where we need to be ready to make some changes as we go. So I will say, I'm not sure anyone really kicks off a website refresh or rebuild on a whim. It is a fairly big project, but I have a feeling after hearing about your success, we may have planted a few seeds with some of our listeners. So for those who are thinking about now maybe incorporating a web ops platform into their tech stack or going down that path of looking into it, Josh, what advice would you give them for getting started?
I would think, before you get into technology, and this kind of echoes what one of the elements of success in this story is, really think about the outcomes you're going for, the team that you have, and the problem you have, because I think I see people often jump to, we need to get the right technology decision made. And that is important, but it usually should be an outcome of really thinking through the problem, really thinking through the team, and really thinking about, like, how do we want to solve this problem? Because there's lots of different approaches, and so our perspective on things is there's certain things that a platform like ours just does, and you don't need to think about it too much. But then there's a lot of what we do that's sort of opinionated from a how to approach the problem standpoint and the process that you use. So my advice would be, if you're interested in any of the stuff that I've been talking about anyway, is like, it starts as a how do we want to work type of question, not what tools do we have. You get to the tools pretty quickly, but if you don't have the first conversation, sometimes you can end up going in circles a little bit.
I know he's not on camera, but I guarantee you Eric is smiling like ear to ear in hearing you say that as well, because that's definitely something we talk about internally as well. So Omar, I'm going to throw a similar question over to you. Can you give us sort of, what is something that went really well for you in this project? What is something, maybe lessons you learned along the way in terms of like advice for anyone who's looking at maybe undertaking a similar project?
Sure, yeah. Having been part of 4 redesigns and upgrades here at Wallace, we are always learning things to help make the next project better. One thing that helps is having your ducks in a row. I touched on this earlier. So something similar to what Josh was saying, doing a lot of pre-work before reaching out to ESN and starting the whole process. We worked with a content strategy firm, like for the first time in any one of the projects that I've been involved with here, a firm called Modern Craft, to help us develop our content strategy. And just similar to what Josh was saying, we did a lot of user testing. We did surveys to find out what works, what didn't work with the current website at the time. Listening to our audience helped make the site as the success it is. And we had some incentives to get people to respond, to get a better response rate, and actually sit down with us. And we had someone sit down on a computer and go through them, watch them go through the website and take notes. And I think that helped.
I love that idea. Thank you. And so Beth, finally over to you as the person who kind of brought all of this together. What advice would you give someone in the early stages of a website redesign rebuild?
Yeah, and this actually goes back to something Josh was mentioning about the stakeholders and having, sometimes they're like not paying attention till the very end, and that can cause huge issues. We had a client who we rebuilt their site. We were 1.5 years in, ready to go live, and the CEO decided he hated the design and scrapped the whole project. So what I find is the very most important thing that you have when you're starting a project like this is to have somebody who can internally, who could properly handle change management at your company, and then also someone who could advocate for the work being done. So someone who's saying, hey, we need you to pay attention here. All along the way. A website redesign could be a really long process, and it can be pretty disruptive to many people internally who are used to a certain set of tools and a certain way of doing things. And a website touches all aspects of your business. So someone who can champion your effort across all groups internally is key. If you don't have that advocate internally who makes sure the right people are at the table at the right time, the process can get off track. You can have subpar results. You can even have somebody cancel it after 1.5 years. So I really do think the number one thing is making sure you've got those people internally who are helping with change management and who are advocating and saying, I need you guys at the table now, and everyone should be paying attention.
That's really, really sound advice all around. Thank you guys. And so as we wrap this up and get ready to hand things over to Eric and Alex, who will be taking us through our IntelligenceBank roadmap, I'd love to hear what's next for each of you. So Josh, we'll start with you again. Looking ahead at what's left of 2024, what is next on the horizon for you and for Pantheon?
Well, one of the things I'm really excited about, I'm here and thank you for inviting me. Not just because we were involved as the platform for this particular case study, but also because we have a great partnership with Intelligence Bank. And one of the things that I'm really excited about for us for this year is being able to be more out front with our technology partners. Because as I mentioned before, where we really add extra value, it's in these use cases where people are trying to compose something and they're going to be working with multiple different players. And as we're able to develop these partnerships and give people, they're always free to choose. In the spirit of open source, they can integrate anything they need to. But if we can give people a well-lit path or guide folks to find the right partner and then help make that, do more to help. And I just had a conversation with some folks from your team about how we could do more, just like wiring up image stuff to CDNs and other things. If we make more of that implementation easier and more turnkey, everybody wins. And so I'm also working with a customer data and personalization partner called Lytics that I just top of mind for me because we're about to go to our big conference in Portland next week and we're going to be showing a demo there. But lots of exciting stuff happening on that front where we can add extra value and innovation sort of in concert with our technology partners. So looking forward to leaning in on that over the rest of the year.
Awesome. Love it. Omar, you survived this project. You're almost a year from having launched it. What are you most excited about next, either for the website, the Wallace Foundation? What does the rest of this year look like for you?
Well, we had a really very ambitious goal for this website redesign project, so much so that we had to scratch some things and call this rollout of phase 1. So this project isn't completely over. We have some things that we are currently working on for phase 2, such as a searchable grantee database that is currently being worked on by YesAnd. And we are also adding DOIs, which are digital object identifiers that are used in the research community, in which an ID number is assigned to each report, which can then be tracked and cited. So the project is not over yet. We still have more things to do, which we are all very excited about. So that's we're going to keep it going.
Fantastic. And you said we're big fans of phase 1, phase 2, and very ambitious projects. So you've set the right tone for our roadmap conversation momentarily. But before we get into that, Beth, are you sticking around? It sounds like you're still sticking around to be part of phase 2.
Can't
what
get
are
rid
you
of
most
us.
excited
Yep.
about?
No, I mean, I always look at, I always hope in my job that I'm not just, spinning up a new website and then bye, see you later. We always want to work long-term with our clients, right? Because in my view, a website is never truly done. So you can have a great phase 1 and then you can keep adding and iterating, there's always work that needs to be done to keep it secure, up to date, and performing well in search engines. So I always hope that we have a long-term relationship with our clients and we continue iterating and continue the success.
That's awesome. And it sounds like that's what's happening. I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to join us today, for sharing your experiences, obviously for working with Intelligence Bank. If anyone has any questions, please drop them into the Q&A. We will, as Eric mentioned at the beginning, send them out. If you've got questions for Josh, for Beth, for Omar specifically, drop them in there as well, and we'll share those out and get answers back to people. But with that, I'm going to wrap this up. And Eric, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Thank you, Omar, Josh, Beth, Susie. Appreciate everything that you shared with us today. It's always really great to hear direct insights from the folks that are doing the hard work and making all the technology work. As Josh sort of alluded to, the tools is an important part of it, but it's not the most important part. And it always comes down to the people that make the difference on success or not. So we appreciate the partnership with each of you and look forward to continuing to work together in the future.